Maybe the Roswell crash, which helped us develop the technological basis for the weapons systems to protect our planet from the EBEs, was also the mechanism for successfully implanting a completely alien non-humanoid life form that survives from host to host like a virus. A digital Ebola that we humans will carry to another planet someday. Or what if an enemy wanted to implant the perfect spying or sabotage mechanism into a culture? That's from The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso, which came out the same year as The Phoenix Lights. In this post is Monolithic AI Alien Invasion. And I also got this schematic of the Tree of Life from The Ethership Mystery and Its Solution by Layne, which I've mentioned. And I said, the sum of many of the realizations so far recounted in this publication have brought me to a better understanding of the hyperdimensional mechanics of our living matrix and the false clifothic overlay which has been erected in an accelerated fashion during the last 2 centuries and slowly technologically upgrading but spiritually vampirizing all life on this planet. Humanity has been aware of a higher presence from its vague inception, and yet largely inconclusive about the widely varying accounts of religious, mystical, and paranormal activity and events. Dr. Carl Jung proposed in his work on flying saucers that they are not so much a physical phenomena of nuts and bolts craft from other planets, but more probably in many of the unexplainable cases as psychic phenomena. A microcosmic projection from or of the collective macrocosmic unconscious. The reasons for this could range from the folk belief in higher and lower orders of beings, helping guide the physical life forms to higher or lower modes of consciousness, to collective mechanisms of catastrophe prevention, in the sense that the alien or other helps us to resolve our petty differences, much as nightmares and dreams can affect a change in waking behavior based on conscious and subconscious tendencies, struggles, and resolutions. And it just made me think of how guide, I mentioned in 82, because guidance is 82, the reflection, but then guides would be 88. So there's a lot of connections in 88 that I didn't anticipate, but upon getting to now with, again, the context of the steps of each other number before it, especially in this 80s, 80, 81, 82, etc. 88 is, there's every number, there's a level up of synchronicity in some weird way, with all of the previous, but in this case, I had noticed how Gimel spelled out is 88, and that's the path of not just the middle pillar, but the path going through the abyss, essentially connecting Tifereth and Kether. And yet that sort of connection, not only is it Caduceus is 88, or Caduceus, Caduceus, Caduceus. And so that's another form of the middle pillar. I ended up just seeing, what was the other thing that I saw? Oh yeah, pi, essentially, in Greek, and eta, so pay. So keeping in line, I guess, with that sort of this, I don't know, there's some connection with pay in every number of the 80s spectrum that I found. And, there's the lightning bolt striking the tower and the pay in the tower card. But zap, which is associated with electricity and all that, is 88. There's a bunch of different things I'm trying to think of, and it'll come. I know it's Nike in Greek. Nu, iota. Kappa, eta, Nike, and so Nike is victory, and obviously that's associated with Netzach or Venus on the Tree of Life, but 88 being the number of days in a mercurial year, again going with the caduceus. Gimel being the camel and the sort of like symbolic of the journey. Also Eka Yana, Eka being one in Sanskrit, Yana being vehicle, but also path, and it's symbolic of the spiritual journey in general, but then also the kind of like Mahayana, the great vehicle. And again, victory being kind of where that vehicle takes you, obviously, and then yet Vimala, the Pure Land of Manjushri, is 88. And then the Hebrew word for pure and innocent, but also relating to heaven, I believe, like, is Chethpe. Yeah, polished, rubbed, smooth, clean, guiltless coast, shore. There's like this concept called the immortal shore, relating it also to nirvana, essentially, heaven, harbor, bosom, bay. So these different potential connotations. Polished, rubbed, smooth makes me, and how it's can be 808. That's Nehushtan, or the brass serpent, the copper image. Copper and brass and bronze obviously being polished, and also associated in a sense with the this connection. I guess I wouldn't just say Netzach and Venus and copper and the mirror symbolism, because Mercury with Quicksilver, it's very, they kind of connect. So there's some sort of, I'm trying to kind of riddle it out, but Akasha, the fifth element, is also 88. And so that just makes me think of, there's 88 constellations that are, considered essentially 88 piano keys, and then obviously, the Back to the Future, 88 miles per hour. There's this whole thing about time, space-time, essentially, space, the above and the below, the stars, but then the sort of octave of the piano key spectrum. And then obviously 8 and 11, 8 times 11 is the two different ways you can consider Doth being the 11th after Malkuth, but then counting up from Malkuth, it's the 8th. And so, and then it's also Lang, and the Lama of Lang is a phrase Kenneth Grant uses extensively throughout the Ninth Arch. And this concept of the plateau of Lang is again like a dimensional, somewhere higher up in a sense, or again relating to this the symbolism of optics in 888. Obviously 800, which is Omega, is implied then, and then I don't know. I'm just trying to sit here and go over all that. There's so much to it that I didn't realize 88 would kind of tie in so much of the previous stuff. Also with the carrying further, even like from what I'd mentioned in the last post, as Agata and Visha being 87, the Caduceus being symbolic of, the medical industry, I guess, at this point. But the word hygiene, which connects in my mind to Hygeia, and that was put as like a talisman around the corners of the pentacle or pentagram. And so again, Akasha being the fifth element just makes me think of these connections. But hygiene is 88, and when you look into like the etymology of hygiene and Hygeia, it means healthy or healthful art. And then I calculated Heal, or Heal, Tau, Heian, healthy and art, 666. So again, like every post that I find, I just look at these little codes and keys and like consider the connections, and then can't help but find bigger codes that again just kind of summarize and synthesize the realizations. Oh, and then vaccine, can't forget that. Vaccine is 88. The vaccine is 107. And I've talked about the whole concept of vaccines. And like right before COVID, I was considering this whole serpent antivenom and the snake Dharani in Buddhism. and Takshaka. So I don't know, there's just these little connections I wanted to bring up. I find this, it's like paradoxical because there's simultaneously a lot to it, but at the same time, nobody else sees it or anything. Like, I don't know. It's just, you can find here little bits and pieces here and there. Even like Kenneth Grant, it's like scattered and all over the place. So, yet then me coming and trying to tie it all together, like see a consistency or something. It's just funny. Like, also the concept of Vapa, Bija Vapa, like I've mentioned, is 111. Bija being seed, but also relating to the phonetic letter seed. But then Vapa just means to sow or to seed or to plant. And that's also 88. And so just this idea again of like victory, and the Buddhist makes me think of post 74 and the Solace Tamba Sutra just comes to mind. But Vimala being the Pure Land of Manjushri, Vapa, and this whole concept again of Shambhala mentioned in 86, and Akasha, like there's something to do in my mind with 88 as being this like veil in a sense, not even a veil, but sort of like a threshold of space and time. And when you go to the like Riding the Beast website and look at what it says about 88, it says, surprisingly, it actually mentioned the double directions of the infinity of the universe, the big and the small, essentially. Yeah, it mentioned that like 3 times cranked swastika arms, and the corresponding number when you take 666, take 888 or 88 out of it, divide that by 2. 289 is 17 times 17, so that doubled, and it just made me think of that. And it's I've went over the connections to the like the phrase the swastika is 666. And then just the connections, like historically and then symbolically, there's definitely something to that, and whatever it is, like it has to do with the wheel of time. And so, or really the manifold, like matrix in the true sense, the womb of the space-time, like birth canal, if you want to call it that. But here it says, so therefore here, now then, do this, thus, if not so. So basically there's some like critical point to that number, to this afua or apva, aleph, pe, vav, aleph. Then to spring up or to be high, so again like the plateau of Layne, the caduceus kind of points, goes, symbolizes like the kundalini in a sense. Shaking and disquieting, agitation and terror. It just makes me think of how kundalini, being 181, contains the 11 and the 8. So people's fort, strong, to be warm, hot, to be in heat, initiated men, trained or drilled for war, to cut or lop off, and then till that or ere that. So therefore, until that or ere that has to do, in my mind, with again this karmic qualifier in a sense, or to grasp, get a hold of, to possess, inherit, give in possession, to distribute or allot, to move or flow along, to bore or make hollow. And that goes again with this whole like Gimel and the middle pillar, the tower in general, I guess. Pava, another rearrangement of Vapa. Pava, like Pavamana, relates to purification and wind. A burrowed or excavated place, a shaft of a mine, a channel or a ravine, a weighty brook or torrent, a stream. So again, the flow. Anyway, I just wanted, that's why I like doing this. I'm always finding like a little more to these, not just the numbers, but these like connections and all that. Applying the secret wisdom of the Kabbalah and Gematria to the history of the evolution of man and his psychic faculties, we can better understand the UFO or UAP question and various possible invasion scenarios that may have been or currently are being, I guess, involved in affairs with mankind, planet Earth, and the cosmic hierarchy. In a book from 1950 by Layne, September 8th, 1882 through March 12th, 1961, I guess he was alive from September 8th, 1882 to May 12th, 1961. A parapsychologist entitled The Ethership Mystery and Its Solution is one of the first and still only few books which brings up the tree of life from the Kabbalah into connection with the UFO, or what the author terms the ethership. He too noted the apparent non-physical yet transmundane nature of the phenomena as well. However, 8 years prior to Carl Jung's formalized publication of his opinion in Ein moderner Mythos von Dingen, Die am Himmel gestellten Werden in 1958 in Zurich, English 1959, Flying Saucers, a modern myth of things seen in the sky. The impetus for the manifestation of the latent psychic contents was given by the UFO. The only thing we know with tolerable certainty about UFOs is that they possess a surface which can be seen by the eye and at the same time throw back a radar echo. Everything else is so uncertain that it must remain for the time being, an unproven conjecture or rumor until we know more about it. We do not know either whether they are manned machines or a species of living creature which has appeared in our atmosphere from an unknown source. So obviously the whole idea of post-biological entities isn't kind of common yet, obviously, like it still isn't. But it is not likely that there are meteoric phenomena, since their behavior does not give the impression of a process that could be interpreted in physical terms. 3i Atlas comes to mind. But their movements indicate volition and psychic relatedness, e.g. evasion and flight, perhaps even aggression and defense. Their progression in space is not a straight line and of constant velocity like a meteor, but erratic like the flight of an insect and of varying velocity, from 0 to several thousand miles per hour. And so many different things come to mind, like the drone situation of last year, in which there was real drones and then weird, like new cutting-edge drones and possible UFOs as well, coming in and offshore and whatnot. And in combination with the problem of, like, you know, the Navy and all these other types of craft and videos that they've released, it's almost like I mean, it's like they're just trying to give more credibility to the some of these. I don't know. It's so crazy. It's like too much to parse out into potential scenarios, but it's almost like they would rather people misinterpret human and terrestrial craft as UFOs to discredit the whole, concept. And that seems to be what's been going on in varying degrees for decades. So they are, in a sense, an espionage tool. Like, that's not to discount the likelihood of there also being phenomena that aren't, black project. Their progression in space is not so. The observed speeds and angles of turn are such that no earthly being could survive them any more than he could the enormous heat generated by friction. So, and that also leads just the obvious, like, they must have had AI or advanced, technology for hundreds of years longer than what we know. And I say they, but it could be humans or it could be other species, so who knows. allegedly the tall whites. But the simultaneous visual and radar sightings would in themselves be a satisfactory proof of their reality. Unfortunately, well-authenticated reports show that there are also cases where the eyes see something that does not appear on the radar screen, or where an object undoubtedly picked up by radar is not seen by the eye. And of course, aside from hallucinations, which that is, a scenario, but when there's mass hallucinations or shared hallucinations, if you want to call it that, there is there's so much to the idea of altering, the brain, like chemistry and the magnetics and the blah blah blah, with whether it's directed energy web, like that's all been used as ways to discount or just like to speculate. But yeah, there's so much to what all these things, but I will not mention other, even more remarkable reports from authoritative sources. They are so bizarre that they tax on our understanding and credulity to the limit. That's the whole thing. Some of these things I think are designed for that, but at the same time, like, that doesn't make them completely impenetrable. And in a weird way, like, these are all opportunities to further understand and explore that battlefield, if you want to call it that. If these things are real, and by all human standards it hardly seems possible to doubt this any longer, even he said in 1959 or 58, then we are left with only two hypotheses: that of their weightlessness on the one hand, and of their psychic nature on the other. This is a question I, for one, cannot decide. So it also makes me think of this 88 coming to mind as some sort of threshold between the Akasha. It makes me think of this double door, in a sense, the Dothian doorway, but space and time, dilation, etc. In the circumstances, however, it seems to me advisable at least to investigate the psychological aspect of the phenomenon so as to throw little light on this complicated situation. From page 116. Beginning on page 107, incidentally, of the summary of chapter 4, Jung goes on to talk about the meaning attributed to the psyche of the dreamer to dreams, or to Rorschach, or anything. Meaning is the key to the astral realm, attributed to Yesod, foundation on the tree of life. Yesod in Hebrew is a combination of Yod, He, the mother, or the father and mother aspect of Tetragrammaton, and Samek, Vav, Daleth, which is the Hebrew word for secret, God in secret. 9 is the Ennead, which represents the manifest aspects or angels of the hidden God, Amun. These symbols reconcile the serpent and the egg, the light and the dark, or energy and conduit or shell. In the better translation of Yod-He, or I.E., the root of Isus also, would be the breath or life force. The binary 1 and 0, the ghost in the machine, God in the machine, the babe in the egg, spirit and matter, etc. The seed in the womb, or the matrix, or the earth. Yesod is the first sphere above Malkuth, or matter, the mundane waking state, and represents the thread of the astral light, dropping down like the head of the serpent form of Hadith in Liber AL, chapter 2, verse 26. I am the secret serpent, coiled about to spring. In my coiling there is joy. If I lift up my head, I and Nuit are one. If I droop down mine head and shoot forth venom, then is rapture on the earth, and I and the earth are one. The serpent, though demonized, is symbolic of the astral cord or thread which weaves the infinite web of Maya or manifestation. It represents the evolutionary impulse, the zap, which is itself the sexual power associated with life, evolution, and magic. This is essentially the Kundalini, which is a rarefied spectral link, or spectrum, between the toroidal poles of the micro and macrocosms. The hexagram, or Magen David, in Hebrew 107, linking it to the egg, the shield and the egg, becomes the unicursal hexagram in its implosive union of opposites, above and below, fire and water, within and without, which generates the hebdomad of the Ruach, or the crystallization process of the mystical fire and water, i.e. light and dark, or the astral light and the glyphothic mold, or quantum matter in its mechanics. 107 is a number that has been analyzed extensively throughout this blog, and it is further telescoped here in relation to the UFO and alien phenomena, as its implications are just beginning to be more fully integrated and understood. The gold egg is mentioned in the Great Invocation by Aleister Crowley as being that of Horus, the Egyptian bird of solar resurrection related to the phoenix. The number 107 is the number of the Hebrew word biksa, Beth Yod Zadi He, meaning egg, in both gold, Gimel Ayin Lamed Daleth, and Chrysos, the spirit of gold, from which is derived the word Christ. 107 is thus the gold egg which was referenced by the wizard Amalantra in the Amalantra working of 1918, which is said to contain the key. Note that 107 is also the hawk's head mentioned in AL chapter 3, verse 51, confirming the gold egg to be related to Horus. The account of my recovering of the gold egg of Ma'ayan on April 2nd, 2011, has been given in numerous previous posts, and it can be summed up again for context. Right after beginning my initiation into the AA on September 9th, 2009, I began reading the work of Kenneth Grant. By the time I got to Outside the Circles of Time, it was shortly after I happened to randomly obtain an obsidian egg from a gemstone store at a desert Renaissance festival in Mesa, Arizona, an area which George Hunt Williamson claims was part of ancient Mu, around the central Phoenix area at 111 and 33 degrees longitude and latitude. Within the days after this simple event, I realized it was a correlation with what Kenneth Grant mentions in Chapter 9 of Outside the Circles of Time on another level. By the time I had realized this, it was the 107th year of the Aeon of Horus, 107 being the formula Achad discovered regarding the egg and the ends of manifestation in Ma'ayan. 107 is also the value of oval, the last four letters of AL 76, or Chapter 2, verse 76, but AL plus 76 being 107, the verse which contains the mysterious cryptogram. I read further on and eventually got to the ninth arch, where Kenneth Grant says 107 is particularly relevant for it represents the gate of the elements, i.e. the Akasha, the Akasha Tattva, symbolized by a black egg. He says, "The reader who has traveled thus far in these Typhonian trilogies will know that the Oracle 107 veils the key to a ritual which opens the gates between these directions or dimensions of space." Biksa 107 means an egg, one of the three major keys to Liber AL, and to the formula RPST OVAL of AL chapter 2 verse 76. The egg implies the nest, Shilba. These gateways open onto the Ma'ayan and the Mani O, the Mani stone, Frater Achad's five-rayed star of the lesser cycle of the Aeon of Maat. 107 is the number of the Tamil Ulam, consciousness, equated with the moon and with the Akasha Tattva and the chakra situate between the cranium and the eyebrows. Assembling correctly the pieces of this puzzle reveals a potent formula for opening the gates of the individualized consciousness continuum. But there are extreme dangers attendant upon such an opening, because the spaces which are not empty beyond the Akasha Tattva could flood the continuum to a scale of cosmic dimensions. Ankoff Nakansu controlled the brain and the hand of Aleister Crowley and declared that the study of this book, Liber is forbidden, and that those who discuss its contents are to be shunned by all as centers of pestilence. Why? Because Liber declares a fragment of the forbidden wisdom, and because 107 equals Pazuzu, the pest. A pest that shall fall upon the day of the great equinox, when another prophet shall arise and bring fresh fever from the skies. A.L. chapter 3, verse 34. And when the invisible house no longer stands. These arcana are yet to be explained by the unfolding of future events. The cyclical recurrence of the egg from its first appearance in Liber chapter 2, verse 49, is also recounted in Outside the Circles of Time in chapter 8, Initiations of Eosic, where Kenneth Grant details his own initiatory revelations concerning the egg, which is at the center of his primary symbol. Egg equals 11, the number of the Qliphoth, or broken shells, which signify the averse side of the tree of life and manifestation, i.e. antimatter, sub or unconscious energy, the reversals, reflections, and refractions. Hence the 11 showing the shadow or reflection of unity. The egg is an apt symbol to use in relation to the phenomenology of the UFO in planetary and cosmic spheres of being. In fact, the word being 70, Beth, He, Yod, Nun, Gimel, the number of the letter An or O, which is a form of the egg itself, subtracting 70 or O from 107, we can discern that 107 is the O gate, or 19 plus 70 plus 18. The gate of the egg, or 0, the Greek word for 0, Meden, is also 107, from which a living being is developed and contained. A further significant correlation here is the fact that 107 is the formula of the final He, spelled out, attributed to the daughter aspect, the window, He, 5, Ma'at, in the fourth dimension and state of matter, or plasma. The O gate is obviously the same gateway mentioned by Kenneth Grant above, and it is furthermore significant that it wasn't until nearly 5 years after receiving the egg myself that I realized 107 is also the number of Lamb the Way, or 71 plus 19 plus 17. Again, 17 and 71 together being 88. The egg-headed entity who was drawn from life by Crowley in 1918 as an idealized self-portrait of his future, or more correctly, higher self. This is merely one of the gateways in which I've opened in order to access higher knowledge and accelerate my initiation and scope of practical insight. Through this singular talisman, I was able to entirely unlock not only the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, but all magical grimoires, religions, sciences, technologies, evolution, megalithic and Masonic architecture, geometric form, magical morphology, as well as much deeper insight into the realm of xenology or ufology. Our language can be used as a tool to extrapolate and derive hitherto unrealized ideas and data, for purposes which should be obvious, as well as, a feature commonly overlooked and unmentioned, provides a basis for the phenomena of subconscious or telepathic communication and reception via inaudible signals or other energetic frequency signatures, in the supersensitivity of some of our perceptive complexes. The whole holonic web of infinite information contained in the seed net of the 09 or 999 spectrum is contained in every part, each retaining its position in relativity to the position of all others. The 9 chambers are merely primary keys, but every number, when considered together, shows each individually and collectively that there is indeed a mathematically precise basis to our numerous languages, as well as perception and consciousness itself. When considering the value of this, and especially the fact that it has been thoroughly ignored and denied, at least by many, yet realized by few, we come back again to the value of meaning. Knowledge or information may be obtained, but the meaning of such information may not be truly grasped or grokked until a certain level of integration and connection is made between the data. Kabbalistically, knowledge is below wisdom and understanding. You can also understand information, but again, the meaning will depend on the level of experiential wisdom. And it is in this way certain things may not yet ever be known here or now. The point or meaning is in the going or way towards such, which creates a feedback loop between the start and the goal, the arrow and the target, which effectively is a living interplay being between alpha and omega, the dot and the circle, or I, AN. The solar channel between Kether, the crown ring, Tifereth, the sun ring, Yesod, the moon or mind ring, and Malkuth, the earth or I ring. This is the middle pillar or Sushumna, the hollow pillar or tower of Kundalini, astral light. The electric 666 force of Quetzalcoatl, or feathered winged serpent or dragon, which animates the cosmic being or the cosmic O. The cosmic O is the all-seeing eye of the hidden God, as well as the incubating egg of manifestation, and apparently also the mouth of Kalki. With the knowledge of this holonic web of the Logos embedded in all space-time, matter, and the Akash, we can better understand the great mystery of the many orders of being, their mechanism, and possibly even their intelligentsia. In the Kabbalah, each sephira or numerical emanation has a particular order of intelligence, which is not to say that each physical planet has terrestrial-like life, but has its own characteristics in nature according to its circumstances. Charles Leadbetter, a theosophist, had said this was literally the case, and that each planetary sphere represented a grade or level of attainment for the soul in its purification toward the solar stellar gnosis and union with or attainment of Godhead. The aim of ritual or ceremonial magic with the practices of invocation and evocation are the effective means whereby one can consciously compel the unconscious to recalibrate its powerful mechanisms of subconscious focus, drive, and energy toward a particular sphere or spirit, God form, thought form, tulpa, etc., in order to effect an eventual anchoring and accumulation of force. The ritual behavior is both ancient and presently active, however largely misunderstood by the majority of people who daily participate in the energizing and deification of particular thought forms. And it's funny, like I mentioned in the last post, in the beginning, like laughing about how people talked about AI becoming God, and yet I didn't think about how AI plus God is 88, but then Dio is like the God. And then also apparently a meaning of or like a name for India in East Asia was Tianzu, but that also means like Lord of Heaven or God essentially, or like it makes me think again of Nike, Victory, Vimala. There is also, however, an aspect to the phenomenon with particular relevance to the subject of transhumanism increasingly coming up in issues regarding privacy, autonomy, civil rights, military capability, and all manner of human social relationships. One theory put forth by Colonel Philip J. Corso, who was the intelligence officer of the 509th Bombardment Wing of New Mexico, which retrieved the wreckage of whatever may have crashed in Roswell on July 7, 1947, is that some of our high-tech advancements in the fields of integrated circuitry, fiber optic, and laser technology Super tenacity in nanofiber materials seems to have arisen in a quantum leap from the time when he claims to have seen firsthand among the various pieces of UFO wreckage extremely similar materials prior to their later dispersion by the military-industrial complex. This would imply that in some way certain technology was effectively seeded by higher intelligences. So again, VAPA. In fact, a technological seeding could also be a much safer and more effective way to begin a more formal invasion and planetary transformation than any other means. It was as if from the year 1947 to 1980, a fundamental paradigm shift in the ability of humankind to process information took place. Computers themselves almost became something like a silicon-based life form. Silicon also is 888 with none final. Just comes to mind, again, just this higher life form and higher perspective, but inspiring the carbon-based life forms on planet Earth to develop them, grow them, and even help them reproduce. With computer-directed process control programs now in place in virtually all major industries, software that writes software, neural network-based expert systems that learn from their own experience in the real world, in current experiments underway to grow almost microscopically thin silicon-based chips in the weightless environment of Earth orbit, may be the forerunner of a time when automated orbital factories routinely grow and harvest new silicon material for microprocessors more sophisticated than we can imagine at the present. See the integrated circuit chip from the Roswell crash site to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is 555 also. Artificial intelligence, or AI, has, since the development of the integrated circuit, become an exponentially growing field. While it has proven useful, the main thing to be considered is that balance must be taken so as to not outweigh biological continence and continuity with technological advancement which could render human and ecobiology compromised, which is the opposite of evolution and progress. The initials AI also hint at the idea of alien invasion, or at least in being a formulation of 11, the Qliphoth or shells. It represents the false light or reflection. The common computer term bug, Beth Vav Gimel, is also 11 and signifies either a virus, glitch, or error in the order as well, or a pest, unwanted influence, and a break or leak in the matrix shell. Generally speaking, as Crowley says, any work other than the great work is technically black magic, or negative, as it tends to dispersion. Considered geometrically, this represents the outer rim or shell of the circle, whereas the central point is the solar unity. The name Satan as the fallen Lucifer or light, and Prince of Darkness being 359 in its original Hebrew form of Shin Teth Nun, shows this break in the circle or egg and the subsequent fall of spirit light into matter darkness. 360 is the awakened dragon, Daleth Resh Kaf Vav Nun, and the Hebrew letter Shin, judgment, so yeah, attributed to the elemental fire, and the Eon card representing liberation, or judgment. The O is a necessary containment zone, or the ring is a necessary containment zone, and the importance of the strength of the magician's circle is imperative in ceremonial magic. Another point of conjecture which has been put forth by many investigators and researchers is that the atomic tests beginning in the mid to late 1940s may have alerted the attention of beings appearing as aerial energy specters, or in some way dissolved some sort of etheric or atmospheric veil, the double doorway of 88, which had previously acted more as a curtain or a cloak. Others have implied a connection between the work of various occultists and the notable death of Aleister Crowley in 1947, as well as the timely findings of the Dead Sea Scrolls and Nag Hammadi manuscripts in 1945 and 47 to be in some way prophetic, significant, or related by way of their mystical networking of related concepts. Before the UFO craze began, in Crowley's channeled text Librae vel Legis, mention is made of what sound like ufological related motifs. I will give you a war engine in chapter 3, verse 7. Another prophet shall arise and bring fresh fever from the skies, AL chapter 3, verse 34, and mention of the globed priest, or the globed priest, which is also 888. The Gnostic manuscripts also contain references to heavenly or cosmic rulers or Archons. One of them is recorded in the Hypostasis of the Archons that, "And the great angel Eleleth, understanding, spoke to me. Within limitless realms dwells incorruptibility. Sophia, who is called Pistis, faith, wanted to create something alone without her consort, and her product was a celestial thing. A veil exists between the world above and the realms that are below. And shadow came into being beneath the veil." So again, it's like the octave, the octawad, the piano keys. And that shadow became matter, and that shadow was projected apart. And what she had created became a product in the matter like an aborted fetus. And it assumed a plastic form molded out of shadow, and became an arrogant beast resembling a lion. It was androgynous, as I've already said, because it was from matter that it derived. Opening his eyes, he saw a vast quantity of matter without limit, and he became arrogant, saying, "It is I who am God, and there is none other apart from me." When he said this, he sinned against the eternity, or the entirety, And a voice came forth from above the realm of absolute power, saying, "You are mistaken, Samael," which is God of the blind. And he said, "If any other thing exists before me, let it become visible to me." And immediately Sophia stretched forth her finger and introduced light into matter, and she pursued it down to the region of chaos. And she returned up to her light, once again darkness, matter. This ruler, by being androgynous, made himself a vast realm, and extent without limit. And he contemplated creating offspring for himself, and created for himself 7 offspring, androgynous just like their parent. And he said to his offspring, "It is I who am God of the entirety." Now when Yaldabaoth saw him, Sabaoth, in his great splendor and at this height, he envied him, and the envy became an androgynous product. And this was the origin of envy. And envy engendered death, and death engendered his offspring, and gave each of them charge of its heaven. And all the heavens of chaos became full of their multitudes. But it was by the will of the Father of the entirety that they all came into being, after the pattern of all the things above, so that the sum of chaos might be attained. There I have taught you about the pattern of the rulers and the matter in which it was expressed, and their parent and their universe. But I said, "Sir, am I also from their matter? You, together with your offspring, are from the primeval Father. From above, out of the imperishable light, their souls are come. Thus the authorities cannot approach them because of the spirit of truth present within them. And all who have become acquainted with this way exist deathless in the midst of dying mankind. Still, that sown element, the Vapa element, the Akasha, will not become known now. Instead, after 3 generations it will come to be known, and it has freed them from the bondage of the authorities' error." Then I said, "Sir, how much longer?" He said to me, "Until the moment when the true man within a modeled form reveals the existence of the Spirit of Truth which the Father has sent. Then he will teach them about everything, and he will anoint them with the unction of life eternal, given him from the undominated generation. Then they will be freed of blind thought, and they will trample underfoot death, which is of the authorities, or Archons. And they will ascend into the limitless light, where this sown element belongs. Numerous references to aborted fetus-like androgynous and spiritless shells occur in the Gnostic texts, and while their qliphothic quality is apparent, many have already speculated as to their relation with the archetypal figure of the gray alien, which itself has qualities similar to an undeveloped fetus with its small, spindly body and oversized head and gooey, amphibious, or abyss-like nature. These are the Nephilim, or fallen ones, the abortions, or broken shells, i.e. fallen angels, or angels. Many different myths also speak of fish people or amphibians from Sirius or Orion, which also corroborate this notion of beings from beyond the dimensional space-time membrane. The seemingly liquid, yet luminous, yet metallic substance frequently attributed to UFO craft seems to be a type of conscious plasma, a more apt term for the similar yet older Akasha. In the Chinese system of elements, Akasha is replaced by metal, thereby equating the astral or Akashic fluid to the metallic alloys known to alchemists. This metallic liquid is the very substance which our own manifestation is crystallized from and by. This plasma is the hitherto scientifically unrecognized factor infinite and unknown, mentioned in AL chapter 2, verse 32, which is synonymous with the body of light and the egg or O, the egg or I, i.e. the holon of manifestation. This holon is the secret ion or secretion which brings us back to the Sod, or Samek Vav Daleth, the secret of Yod-He, Father, Mother, Spirit, Matter, or Jah, if you're Rastafarian. The foundation of Malkuth, which is the coagulated combination and living representation of both. This inner astral light, represented by 9, has been repressed and suppressed, subjugated and siphoned off from the qliphothic, parasitic, vampiric empty shells of 11, rather than the reverse, which should be occurring, in which the inner light, 9, controls the magic light, 11, of outward reflection. This is the most basic way of putting it, and another way of conceiving it may be that the focus, instead of being balanced between both the inward and outward polarities, are being, as in the case of technology, outweighed with too heavy a focus and dependency on outer, impersonal, and essentially hollow, as long as you have no center, distractions. Again, distraction can be 666, and so can motivation. Like kind of two opposite ways of harnessing that solar energy. 10, not 9, 10, not 11, are the spheres, or Sephiroth, which all come together as one in the O, or visual field. 9 being the inward or higher 9 emanations of spirit from source, and 11 being the reflection or shell or screen thereof. Kenneth Grant says in Outer Gateways that the next phase of the human life wave will be typified by the zootype of the beetle. I have surmised that being coprophilic, dung-loving, and with an exoskeleton shell, it is generally qliphothic and reminds me of the computer or android with the metal shell and a highly advanced natural GPS navigation system. The gray alien is also said to be the shell or mask utilized to enable entry into our density of manifestation, and some have said that they are us from the future after we have made a transition through genetic modification, artificial intelligence, geoterraforming, etc., all of which are occurring to the planet as a whole right now. 11 being the one beyond 10, or that which is beyond the material plane, i.e. the abyss, is also anything beyond or outside of the auric egg. And there's this big concept, I can't even think of what book it came up in, but the whole idea of UFOs, and then if they were to be extraterrestrial or trans-Plutonian, to appear involves them getting like involved in the karma of samsara, and generally they aren't bound by that. And so, what am I trying to say? It's all entirely karmic, like, in a weird, in some weird way, whatever this is. And I think it has to do with the past and the future, and their bearing, not just bearing, but the threads of the past, present, and future, and our inability to make sense of that. And so therefore a lot of things get labeled as like Fortean phenomena or UAP or UFO, when it could just be, again, Flatland comes to mind, like misperception of higher dimension or higher dimensional phenomena that doesn't necessarily meet, like, that isn't extraterrestrial, it's just extra dimensional. And I don't think, again, any of these entire categories can be just concluded as these simple explanations, but that's what a lot of organizations and people try to do. So anyway, the mechanization of man has already been discussed, but it should be realized that aside from the potential for invasion from outside alien interests, there is still always the potential for our own inability to mature and maintain proper guidance and control over our own capabilities. And from all my research into these subjects, I have at least concluded one sure thing, which is that man is more of a danger to himself than anything else. It is also hard to believe that people who are too incompetent or, ignorant, careless, to understand these concepts would be at all adequate in contriving it to this level of precision and magnitude. With the above outline, we now have some context to consider certain formulae which I have found concerning these issues, which have enabled me to extrapolate various unknowns from knowns. With the above outline, we now have context to consider certain formulae which I have found concerning these issues, which have enabled me to extrapolate various unknowns from knowns. It is significant that it was the 509th bomb wing which was involved in the Trinity test and the subsequent Roswell crash being 509 also. Another correspondence with 509 is the Greek oi allodopoi gekri, the gray aliens. We also have the alien discs, the alien Archons, a UFO file cover-up, and some Hebrew correspondences show an eerie connection as well. Bavak, or Beth Vav Aleph Kaf final, arrival or coming. Vav Aleph Shin Beth Resh, break or crash or wreck. Teth Mem Yod Nun Tau, hide, conceal, cover up. Zadi Beth Aleph Yod Vav Tau, military. All of which relate to the situation, whether legitimate or contrived. Note that the crash seeded the AI technology is 666, as well as a gray alien UFO crash, a physical alien UFO crashed, and 509 is also the artificial intelligence. Having read the Majestic 12 top secret leaked documents, as well as numerous other declassified files from many other governments, US, the UK, and Brazil, I have applied my knowledge of Gematria and Kabbalah to try and better understand the situation from a generally overlooked and little understood perspective. It appears as though a better understanding of the situation, as well as the mysterious mechanics behind it, can be obtained much easier when this form of connective analysis is utilized. The discoveries I have made are at present too extensive and unprocessed to go into in full at present, so I will stick to more certain relevant formulae for the time being. From what I have gathered, the intelligence agencies from the 40s to the present are not aware of this perspective, at least for the most part. Individuals, however, may be. discredit witnesses. If at all possible, witnesses will be held incommunicado until the extent of their knowledge and involvement can be determined. Witnesses will be discouraged from talking about what they have seen, and intimidation may be necessary to ensure their cooperation. If witnesses have already contacted the press, it will be necessary to discredit their stories. This can best be done by the assertion that they have either misinterpreted natural events, are the victims of hysteria or hallucinations, or are the perpetrators of hoaxes. Deceptive statements. It may become necessary to issue false statements to preserve the security of the site. Meteors, downed satellites, weather balloons, and military aircraft are all acceptable alternatives. Although in the case of the downed military aircraft, statement care should be exercised not to suggest that the aircraft may be experimental or secret, as this might arouse more curiosity of both the American and the foreign press. Statements issued concerning contamination of the area due to toxic spills from trucks or railroad tankers can also serve to keep unauthorized or undesirable personnel away from the area. The alien contactee and the alien abduction phenomena, as well as alien ufology cover-up in general, is all related to the various things which have been discussed in other posts. 666 being the number of the soul as well as the shell, the interface of spirit and matter. It is the formula for evoking as well as banishing intelligences beyond the present waking state of conscious ego identification. 666 is a formula of demonic entity, singular or plural, generally plural as demons have no unity, as well as the soul within. Not all aliens are demons, however, as some would think. Technically, some angels, archangels, and other higher order of beings would also qualify as alien, other, or super/extraterrestrial from our standpoint. 666 is a good example of the mythology behind the fall of light, Lucifer, the light bearer, into matter, i.e. the bringing of fire from heaven to earth. The alien abduction phenomena is largely a misinterpreting, in physical and literal sense, astral etheric happenings. But maybe the aliens can abduct humans. We also find the confirmation that humans have been abducted. The Roswell crash seems to have primarily been used as a smokescreen for the hyperdimensional or quantum nature of the situation and its contrived hype as a merely physical event. This is one of the aspects Kenneth Grant considered, saying that our atomic and technological tamperings may not necessarily have just alerted beings from other spheres or densities of our own sphere, but could have affected or even ruptured holes in our own astral etheric web of manifestation, and thus our individual and collective conscious and subconscious networks. See Outside the Circles of Time and Beyond the Mauve Zone. There is, however, another aspect that is commonly overlooked, which is that of the airships of the late 1800s. Before manned flight was achieved, numerous sightings from many people and places have been reported about mysterious-shaped flying airships that parallel the great UFO flap of the 40s and 50s. Incidentally, around the same time, numerous breakthroughs in electrophysics were being made. Note, 666 is the formula of the electric current. This is the plasma energy itself, and the balls of light are found correspondent. Using this, we find a potential universal language in which to derive more knowledge, as 666 is literally a digital magical language. It is also a type of brain-machine interface itself, in which you can establish remote contact and make contact with the aliens, i.e. others, spirits, angels, demons, shades, etc. Alien life disclosure, alien disclosure file, and the Masonic gematria formula also sums this up. When will you people learn that there are worlds within worlds, that the etheric worlds interpenetrate with your plane and with each other? I know I should not be sticking my neck out by talking so much about these saucers, as you call them, at least until I have investigated fully. But they are not craft constructed on your planet, nor is it necessary to assume that they come from any other planet. It seems impossible to get it through your heads that objects can pass from an etheric to another level of matter and will then appear to materialize there. Then they disappear by dematerialization, returning to an etheric condition. This is in perfect analog to the materializations witnessed in the seance room, which many of your learned men bear witness to. Not only do human forms materialize, but solid objects appear miraculously, and often these are brought from long distances. You call them apports, but an apport is dematerialized so that only the etheric pattern remains, and then the original atoms are reassembled in the pattern or mold, and you have a materialized object. Well, these saucers that puzzle you so much come out of an etheric world also, and can return to it. The purpose of these visitors is simply to compel your attention, to wake you up. The Coming of the Guardians, page 12, by Layne, 1957.
I think a very tiny fraction of UFOs are alien aircraft. Very small fraction. Maybe 0.25%. I think the vast majority of UFOs are home-built. The reason I say that is because of all the damage they do. I think the actual alien craft are detuned to our time-space. So they don't do a lot of damage to our time-space. Except when they actually make contact with it, which is very rare. I think they're only visible when they're morphing in and out of our time-space. They deliberately avoid us otherwise. I think they make contact individually. They have a sense of who's open to contact and who isn't. And it's not who's open in a sense of who will really want to talk to them, but who's open in the sense of who's not going to run off and get something and whack them to death. Or who's not going to get ugly, or who's not going to have a coronary when they actually see one. Or who isn't going to turn them into see what I got, or turn them into a mystical being or whatever. I think the larger ships are transports only. I think all of their ships are not built, they're grown. I think they're actually grown like crystals. I got a lot of remote viewing data on the ship's construction, but it's impossible to display. You can't draw it. It's even difficult to talk about. The ships communicate with the occupants. It's almost like organic or chemical in some way, neurological in some way. They actually grow the ship on a molecule-to-molecule basis. They're so light and intricately strong, like the structure of a bone would be. Everything on board the ship is intricately tied to their space-time. In other words, when they're here, it's still tied to their space-time, not ours. So it's very difficult for us to relate to it and them to relate to us in a space-time sense. And everything on board is mentally tied to their ship and to each other. So they know more about what's going on within their ship and within each other. So they're very sensitive to when they've been invaded by another entity. We've never seen an alien that is not wearing a suit. So when you see the guys with the funny eyes and a little slit for the nose and a little slit for the mouth, that's a suit. That's an environmental suit. You're not seeing the alien. And the reason why you're not seeing the alien is because they're probably butt ugly. Yeah, I mean, what's your reaction in most cases when you see that big, hairy, ugly cockroach? They understand that we have deep-seated emotional reactions to some things. They understand that. And so they're not going to show us what they look like. There's probably few human beings on the planet that have ever seen a truly stripped-down alien. They know that we probably couldn't handle it yet. And it's probably why we won't have a full species-to-species contact for a long time, because they see what we do when we react to other humans of different color or different culture or different religion. I mean, they watch our TV.